Good evening. It is great to have you back on the Urban Debate tonight. Protests against Citizenship Act have now snowballed. Today, once again, miscreants and criminals masquerading as peaceful protesters hijacked the agitation. In Delhi, in the Seelampur Jafrabad area, policemen were attacked, a police post was burnt, stones were pelted, buses and other vehicles were torched, public property destroyed. Apart from this, while there were protests in many other cities of our country, like we saw protests across 22 universities yesterday, politics is only intensifying over the Citizenship Amendment Act. As many as 5 states have now claimed that they will block this new law. Madhya Pradesh says they want to block Citizenship Law. Kerala says they will not allow this. It is completely unacceptable. Punjab says they want to block Citizenship Law. So does Rajasthan. And of course, leading from the front is West Bengal and Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, who says that there is absolutely no chance. In fact, she's gone 2 steps ahead. And she said the entire work for the National Population Register that is supposed to start next year has been put on hold. She won't even allow that to take place. 2 chief ministers have even taken to streets, including Mamata Banerjee, against this new law. 12 opposition parties, including Congress, Trinamool Congress, DMK, Aam Aadmi Party, Samajwadi Party, CPI and CPIM, have come together against this new law. Centre says states will be going against the federal structure if they oppose this law. That this action by various state governments from Bengal to Punjab and Kerala is actually a threat to the federal structure, to the spirit of federalism in our country. So I ask you this question tonight as we bring about our legal experts and our political representatives. Do you think this is the right way to go? If the parliament of our country has passed a law, has passed a citizenship law, which is meant for this entire country, can 1 state or 4 states actually go against it? Is that even possible or legal? Let's say good evening to our panelists. Tuhin Sinha, spokesperson for the BJP, joining us this evening. Binoy Viswam, member of the Parliament of Rajya Sabha with the CPI, with us this evening. Sukhendu Shekhar Roy, member of Parliament with Rajya Sabha for TMC, also joins us. And I've got Manpreet Sandhu, spokesperson for the Congress Party, representing the Punjab unit, with us. Let me actually begin by going across to Mr. Sukhendu Shekhar Roy. Mr. Roy, if you can help us understand, and you are a member of parliament yourself, how can a state government block a law or legislation that the parliament has approved?
Before that, the question is to be raised why this bill was introduced in parliament after 72 years of independence. What prompted the BJP government to bring that bill? That is the moot question. Once this question is adequately answered, the other questions will be replied. First of all, we are agitating against this bill or act because it is entirely unconstitutional. As you know, preamble to the Constitution is the soul of the Constitution. And our preamble says, and I quote, that India is a sovereign, secular, socialist, democratic republic. So, secularism is the part of the preamble which is the basic structure of the Constitution. And in umpteen number of cases, the Supreme Court has held, right from the Keshavananda Bharati case till Minerva Mills case, that the Parliament has the power to amend the Constitution, but it cannot amend the basic structure of the Constitution. Therefore, a bill which has been brought in contravention of the preamble or other provisions of the Constitution, which are basic structure of the Constitution, that is absolutely illegal, unconstitutional, if not anti-constitutional. And that is why a number of PIL have been instituted in the Supreme Court, and after Supreme Court decides on that, your question can be adequately replied.
No, so that's my point. And in fact, Mr. Roy, I was going to say exactly that. Let the Supreme Court decide on that. Let the matter go to the Supreme Court. Let them decide if it's constitutional or not constitutional, and if it was the right thing to do. But what gives the right...
It is sub judice. Already it is sub judice.
So what gives the right to any government from any state, from Punjab to West Bengal and Kerala, to say we won't allow it? How can a citizen of this country not be recognized by a handful of states?
Yes. 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 Let me reply to your question. In a democracy, will of the people is supreme. Vox populi, vox dei. That is the principle of a democratic society. And we belong to a democratic society, not a theoretical society. So therefore, we shall hold the view till such period it is otherwise held by the Supreme Court that so far the people in general and a particular community in particular, they are opposing this bill, this act. And my leader, Ms. Mamata Banerjee, has time and again has said that we are with the people. Secondly, you are talking about federalism. Article 1 says, India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Nowhere it has been said Hindustan. Either it is India or it is Bharat. There is no place for Hindustan in our constitution. And if you respect the federal spirit of the constitution, the central government ought to have consulted the state governments before introducing this bill, because the citizens of our country do not live in the union territory alone, but they are spread over 30 states of India.
Okay.
Therefore, it was the duty of the central government to consult the state governments before bringing this contentious bill. That is the question.
Well, okay. But
they did not.
But okay, I will take the same question across to Binoy Viswam, also a member of Parliament of the Upper House. Mr. Viswam, you are a member of the same Parliament that passed this law. Now, it doesn't matter, whether you are on board with it or TMC is on board with it. Fact of the matter is that as per the current constitution, the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha voted on it and the law got cleared. How can any state now block it? Doesn't that go against the spirit of federalism? Doesn't that go against what our own constitution tells us as per Article 256?
Not at all. Not at all. I share many of the views just now expressed by my senior colleague, Mr. Roy. We are trying to uphold the Constitution. We are struggling to defend the Constitution. Our fight is to see that the values of the Constitution is upheld. That's why we oppose the CAA. It's 100% anti-Constitution, 100% anti-India, 100% anti-national. And so, such a move of the government cannot be supported by any law-abiding citizen or law-abiding government or law-abiding party. That is why we oppose the CAA. Mahatma Gandhi has taught us, when a government, in the name of its supremacy or power or authority, try to impose its own authoritarian views on the people has a right, to question them, to resist them. And that right is the same what we are trying to implement today. We are trying to implement the people's rights over an authoritarian government which want to make this country, which is not a country of the Indian people. Because of that reason, we oppose it. The Constitution is very clear, very clear. India is a secular state. Underline this fact. India cannot exist other than that. This can exist, it can go further, it can develop, it can challenge the whole future only when it is a secular state. And the present government, led by the RSS, they want to defeat the secular psyche of the Indian people.
Okay.
They want to tarnish the image of India all over the world. And they want to make India a theocratic state, which is anti-India. It's anti-people. India cannot be theocratic.
No,
They
but Mr.
want to
Viswam,
make India another Pakistan.
Mr. Viswam, I have three more panelists that I do have to go to, but I disagree with you. Because as per our constitution, it is the central government, the union government's responsibility to look into citizenship, into naturalization, into defense, atomic energy, CBI, intelligence, diplomatic and international trade relations. It is the responsibility of the state government to maintain law and order in their own state, to ensure there is public health, state public services, and land and revenue and so on. There is a very clear distinction. Now, aren't what you're doing also anti-national when you block a law and a legislation that the parliament has brought in?
Never, never, never. Because this legislation is a legislation which is made only out of mere numbers, of severity of their numbers. But the people are not with them. They may have numbers, cooked up numbers, the numbers that they managed by crook or by crook. They manage numbers in the parliaments. But the people of the country, they don't agree with them. Because the people of India know that India can go forward only as India. They want to make it as a Pakistan. In the discussions in the parliament, we heard from the BJP friends so many times about Pakistan, what happened in Pakistan, what happened to Pakistan Muslims, Hindus, what happened to Pakistani minorities, all this they asked us. We replied them. The only point is that whatever happening in Pakistan is Pakistani style of doing things. That is not the Indian way. Don't make India a Pakistan. India is India. India want to remain as an Indian people, Indian states. That's the reason.
All right, so before I go to Sanjay Hegde for more on the insights on the legality and the constitutional aspect of what these state governments are threatening to do, Tuhin Sinha, come in and respond here first, because what TMC and the left are saying is, well, you started this. Why did you railroad this law through the parliament without consulting the states to begin with? How can you now claim that they are the threats to the federal structure?
Tanvi, those who keep parroting the line that this act is unconstitutional have very little comprehension of the Constitution. And I will explain why this act is perfectly constitutional. First of all, what are the two objections? Article 14 and Article 15. That is what they say. Article 14 allows for reasonable classification based on intelligible differentia. And under which, when we classify 6 different minority communities, it passes the test. Article 15 applies to bona fide citizens. And at the same time, once the bill has been passed by both houses of parliament and approved by the president, it is a law. And I heard someone say that, we used force to make it happen. Are you trying to, once again, indirectly, trying to question the EVM machine? Because we have won majority with our efforts. People have supported it. If you don't have the numbers today, and besides, look at the hypocrisy over here. Mamata Banerjee in 2005 had a different thing to say about NRC. Today, she has a different point of view. So just because this act does not cater or it possibly ends the vote bank politics of certain political parties, they have ganged up against the government. No, so explain to me, Article 14 and Article 15, how is it violative? Harish Salve ji has explained this. I have, made this point even before that. You keep emphasizing on rhetoric, but fact is, today, let me say this, that the biggest violation of citizenship laws was an article called Article 35A, which gave exclusive rights to the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly to decide who would be a permanent citizen of the state. And for 60 years, the same parties who backed this unconstitutional provision today have a problem with a perfectly constitutional bill called the CAA, which has become the CAA. So this is the hypocrisy of these parties.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Sanjay Hegde, who's sitting with and holding his head in a very disturbed, with a very disturbed look on his face. Mr. Hegde, do you want to respond to what Tuhin Sinha is saying?
A little learning is a dangerous thing. So that's the first comment. You cannot say just reasonable classification.
Applies to you too, sir.
As long as the classification does not have a nexus. I will not be interrupted. Please have that courtesy. Okay. The point is, if your legislation deals with illegal immigrants, then provides a path for citizenship. If you exclude one community solely on the basis of religion, then that has no nexus. They are all illegal immigrants, irrespective of religion. If, on the other hand, you are going to say that the Constitution permits you to make distinctions based on religion, that is specifically prohibited by the Constitution. You may have the power to make laws, but those laws must be reasonable and not manifestly arbitrary. This ground of striking down legislation is exactly the ground that was used by the Supreme Court to strike down something like triple talaq. You may be in power, but if you do not handle power correctly, the Constitution and constitutional machinery will step in, primarily the Supreme Court. Yes, the other people are right that the matter is before the Supreme Court and it will be examined. What I would like to say, as far as the question of the various states is concerned, the first thing we must understand is that India is a representative democracy. States and India is a federation, as has already been pointed out. It is a federation of states. It is not that the center is supreme and that the states are mere servants bound by central directive at all points of time. Yes, the center can issue directives and can impose president's rule if so required. But even that will be subject to judicial review. There is a time when you can where if you stretch the Constitution to breaking point, it will break. We are very near that point now. It is time yet for the center to rethink.
Okay, but Mr. Hegde, I am looking at an order that came from the Supreme Court in February 2016, where the Supreme Court took serious note of the non-implementation of the Central Welfare Law, the National Food Security, in some states, including the state of Gujarat. And the Supreme Court said that states cannot disobey the legislation that has been cleared by the Parliament. Now, like I said, if the Constitution clearly says that citizenship is an issue that the central government and the union government looks at, and it's a law by the Parliament, then is it simply grandstanding that Mamata Banerjee and Captain Amrinder are doing? Is this legally possible to stop the law?
See, as far as grant of citizenship is concerned, it is it's a matter for the center, agreed. But when it comes to an NRC, NPR kind of exercise, which is enumerating the number of people inside a state, the state definitely has to look at considerations like law and order. If the state says that implementing something this harsh, even if it is a central legislation, will lead to law and order problems, and if the center doesn't listen, the correct forum is the Supreme Court. The states are signaling their intent. If you have a problem with the states signaling even their intent, then you are not a federal country anymore.
Okay.
We are not little minions at the service of one central emperor.
Okay, so is that what it is? Manpreet, do you want to come in here? Captain Amrinder is simply speaking to his people and his vote bank by saying, no, I'm stand against this. But effectively, he can't do anything unless the Supreme Court rules otherwise.
What our CM has said is purely on the legal aspect of the bill. See, this bill has already gone under judicial scrutiny, and we will wait for the Supreme Court to decide as to whether this is applicable or not, and how it is going to be applied, how it is going to be worked out. See, it is not only Punjab. the scenario is that this is a very humongous level of work to be done for every state government, for all departments, and as of now, the government of India is not aware how they will match this, how they will fulfill this entire thing. The cost on the exchequer and everything is too much, which the government of India is not realizing till now. As earlier their track record says of the hasty implementation of the GST, hasty implementation of the demonetisation, this is another hasty step by the BJP government, which is divisive in nature. Coming to the federal point, there is nothing federal in this bill. The states should have been consulted on this bill. This is a bill of such prime importance. There is no consultation with the states. It's amazing. And what Captain Amarinder Singh has rightfully said, we will look into all aspects legally as to how this bill has to be stopped.
Well, I don't
and
think
that is already under judicial scrutiny with the Supreme Court.
I don't know how we can call this hasty. It's always been part of BJP's manifesto. They went with this manifesto to the people of this country and got an overwhelming majority. And then they worked on it. But Tuhin Sinha, please respond to what
stopped them? No, listen to me. Listen, give me a minute.
Yes.
What stopped the BJP government to consult the chief ministers?
Okay, let's ask Tuhin that question.
Isn't it not hasty? What stopped them from just consulting the CM?
In the spirit of federalism and cooperation between the centre and the states, Tuhin, that Mr. Rajnath Singh and other BJP leaders are reminding us of, why didn't the BJP consult the states?
Because we know for a fact that many of the state governments in India, whether it is Mamata Banerjee's TMC-led government in Bengal or a few other governments, they are sold on vote bank politics. 3 years ago, there was a video on a news channel, there was a video of one of Mamata Banerjee's ministers proudly telling a guest from Pakistan, come let me show you the mini Pakistan in Calcutta, which referring to an area called Garden Reach. So throughout, TMC has illegally settled migrants in Bengal for its vote bank politics. So do you expect an iota of honesty from them on the issue? This is an issue which was very close to our ideology. And besides, let me, for a fact that right at the time when the Nehru-Liaquat pact was being signed, this was always the alternative. Nehru went ahead with a pact which was dishonored by Pakistan. So this is not something, which has come out of the blue. This was always in consideration.
Yes, let me in fact ask Mr. Roy to respond to that. Mr. Roy?
It is ironical that the party which was in favor of partition of India and for that matter partition of Bengal and Punjab, they are now putting blame on some other people. Anyway, the moot question, this should not divert the issue which we are discussing today. This is an exchange of views, no confrontation from any side. So the question that you have raised, that can be answered in two different ways. First of all, you see, if you look at the bill, now it is an act, but if you look at the bill which was tabled in Lok Sabha, it had a statement of objects and reasons. And in the objects and reasons, it was stated that those who have been religiously persecuted in 6 countries, in 3 countries of those 6 religious groups, Hindu, Christian, Parsi, etc., 6 religious groups in 3 countries, those who have been victims of religious persecution, they will get citizenship. That was in the statement of objects and reasons, which is absent in the bill. So it is a faulty bill. If there is no reasonable nexus between the statement of objects and reasons and the provisions of the bill, so at the outset, the bill is faulty and it should be set aside. It should be thrown out. This is number one. Number two, while it has been stated about religious persecution in the statement, nothing has been murmured about the linguistic persecution. Linguistic persecution. Why I am saying so? Because these people do not know the history, recent history or the past history, because they make history every day by uttering some nonsense. You see, in 1971, in March 1971, From March 1971, 8 million people came from East Pakistan. While that liberation war of Bangladesh was going on, it was not Bangladesh. Bangladesh did not emerge at that point of time. Bangladesh emerged only after 16 December 1971. So from March 71, 8 million people came and took refuge in India. And government of India provided shelter and food to them for some time. Everybody knows, it is written in the history, the government document. Government submitted before the United Nations Human Rights also. 2 million women were raped within East Bengal by the armies of Pak military junta. So everybody knows. So why they were persecuted? Not because of religion. The Hindus and Muslims who used to speak Bengali and they belong to the Bengali race, they were persecuted. Irrespective of their religion, they were persecuted because their language was Bengali. And thereafter, Bangladesh emerged. Everybody knows that. I am not repeating or going to that. So what about that? Many people that out of, one second.
Let me ask you this.
Out of that 8 million people who took refuge in India, many of them returned to their own country.
Okay.
But some of them, they remained in India, both Hindus and both Muslims. So what about the linguistic Hindus and what about the linguistic minorities? Why the bill is silent about that?
Win?
I'm very surprised that, the esteemed TMC representative's knowledge about history. Are you trying to say that Bangladesh was created for linguistic reasons?
He did not.
No, are you trying to suggest that?
I can teach you history.
Are you trying to do away, or are you trying to do away with the fact that 2.4 million Hindu Bengalis were killed in the 1971 Liberation War? How was the creation of Bangladesh a linguistic war?
I am not supposed to reply to your question.
No, that's precisely what I'm asking you. Are you trying to say you brought in the element of linguistic persecution in the creation of Bangladesh? Are you trying to say that Bangladesh was created for linguistic reasons?
There was no Bangladesh at that point of time. You do not know anything.
Okay,
that is after 16th of December 1971.
I don't want to dwell
What about the 8 million people who came?
I don't want to dwell for far too long into the history of what happened. Only because tonight the focus is on the legality of what some of the state governments are threatening to do. And I want to come back to that point and the practicality of it. Mr. Sanjay Hegde has a point and then I will go across to Binoy Visson. Mr. Hegde first, yes.
No, just a point of fact. Bangladesh did come out because of linguistic reasons. The Pakistanis tried to impose Urdu on both East and West Pakistan. The Bengali-speaking East Pakistan revolted, and that was how Bangladesh emerged. Linguistic reasons have as much caused problem in our neighborhood and in our country as anything else. Sri Lanka split between Tamils and Sinhala. So those who fail to learn the lessons of history are condemned to repeat it. Now, the second point I wanted to make was simply this on the federal structure. If the center were to make a law by its majority that people with bald heads cannot practice law, would that be reasonable?
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
And could states say, no, we will not impose it?
So let me reiterate over here, the linguistic persecution or the linguistic war was an accompaniment of the larger religious war. You know, this is the kind of window dressing which liberals and seculars are used to doing, and they continue to do till date. How is it that if you go into the data, the 2.4 million people who were killed were, if not all, more than 90% were Hindu Bengalis. Anyway, coming back to the present, you know, when you talk about the three theocratic states and the persecuted minorities, a very simple question. Where are the, tell me one other country which can shelter or which is ready to provide existence to these 6 minorities persecuted for religious reasons. As far as the sectarian violent victims are concerned, you'll find 50 other countries. But tell me one country where the Hindus, Buddhists, the Christians, the Sikhs in these countries who have been persecuted can go to.
No, okay. No, you know what? I don't want to go back to the merits of this because repeatedly we've debated that, and I don't buy this argument. If we feel the same way for the minorities in these 3 nations, we should feel the same way for those who have fled from their other countries, whether it's Sri Lanka or even Tibet or even Myanmar, that we feel for certain religions and not for the others is frankly a little unnerving and disturbing for me. But I want to come back to the practicalities of this. And Mr. Binoy Viswam, help me understand, and I've been trying to wrap my head around this. If somebody becomes a citizen of our country, as per the new law, if they are in Assam where it's been implemented and part of the Assam where it gets implemented, and they become a citizen of this country, and then they decide to travel to Bengal or Punjab or Kerala, you can't stop them. You can't stop a citizen of this country from living, working anywhere they want. Then what's the point in taking this grand stand of saying, oh, we won't allow this law?
No, I shall come to your question a bit later. Let me first state one thing regarding the history, because my friend from the BJP was running to tell about the history. I just remind him, when he talked about Bangladesh or East Pakistan struggle of liberation, please remember one thing. The Ferdinand's slogan was Sonar Bangla, Sonar Bangla. So language was the heart, one of the hearts of that revolution. It was a revolution on which the whole Indian people were with the friends and brothers and sisters of East Pakistan. And that history is very important. One more history we have to remember. That history is that there are people in the RSS BJP holy books who talked about two-nation theory for the first time. It is not Muhammad Ali Jinnah, not Liaquat Ali Khan. It was their hero, their champion, and their guide who first talked about two-nation theory in the year 1923 in the conference of Hindu Mahasabha in Ahmedabad. They told it is impossible to have a unified life under one roof for different cultures together. This was the point that they made in that session. From then they began the two-nation theory and its arguments. It is only 17 years later Muslim League or Jinnah began to talk about that. Now, of late, they want to make this country a next Pakistan, modern Pakistan. Let me say one more thing. That 2 weeks back in Afghanistan, neighboring country, they gave citizenship to more than 4,000 Hindus as Afghan citizens. Please refer the documents there. Ask our embassy to know about it. Without your compulsions, without this bill, our neighboring country, Afghanistan, did this. A new status of citizenship for 4,000 Hindus, I was reported. Please verify it and come for the argument. One more thing. Forget Pakistan for the time being. What about Bangladesh? About Afghanistan? Are they our enemies? Till this day, all the leaders of the BJP were telling that we want very good neighborly relations with the neighboring countries. Friendly relations with them. And we want to help them. And Modi declared some support for the Afghanistan for development. For Bangladesh also, we did support. Now we are calling all of them as our enemies. And day and night calling them all sorts of bad names. And is it the way of the BJP to build a strong relationship with the neighbors? Is it the way to make a stronger India? By keeping all the neighboring countries are our foes and our enemies, and keeping them at a distance, calling them all sorts of idiotic names, you are trying to make India an isolated piece of land, which is anti-Indian interests. It is contrary for the Indian interests. So, I am telling you one more thing. This is the reason. We want to defend India. We want India to go forward united. We want India to remain as a secular country. For these reasons, we tell them this is the wrong step, the wrong direction.
But Mr.
So
Mr.
don't
Viswam, if
play
you
with
can
this
now
fire.
respond to what I asked
There
you,
is
the
time.
practicality of this grandstand that some of the states are taking. How do you stop an Indian citizen from traveling anywhere? How do you have a partial implementation of a citizenship law?
Practicality. No, the bill they passed, out of their sheer strength of numbers, they passed the bill. It is true. But that is technicality. Technicality is one thing, and there is something called practicality. Practicality comes to the concern of the states. All the states are the real people to test the practicality of it. And it was friends here, many of the states already know that on practical terms, such a bill cannot be implemented. Such a bill which want to make hundreds or thousands of Indians as aliens or enemies, how can a state implement it? If a government tries to implement it, there will be chaos, the confusions, moreover internal conflicts inside the states, inside the country. BJP might be leading it. Their justification is that they want to divide the country into Hindus and Muslims. And they count the numbers. BJP friends, when you count the numbers, Hindus might be large numbers majority. But the Hindu psyche is not RSS psyche. The Hindu psyche is not imbibed for the BJP politics. The ideology that you want to preach is the ideology of the German fascists, which is a foreign alien ideology. Hindu philosophy, Hindu religion, Hindu psyche will not accept it. So don't count the numbers and decide that if we divide the country as Hindus and Muslims, we can go to the polls and Hindus are all on one side and Muslims on the other side. So easily we can win the electoral battle. It's a wish of yours which is not going to be practical, which is not going to be implemented or practical. That's why we repeat, technicality is there might be with them, but practically they cannot implement it. The country will not allow them to implement it. The people will not allow them to implement it. We object it, we object it, we object it. And we want to save the country from this kind of divisive forces of the country. BJP is a number one divisive force of India.
Okay. Let me take that point across. Let me take that point across to Sanjay Hegde. Sanjay Hegde, those who oppose the bill say it divides India, it divides it into Hindus and Muslims. The government repeatedly says, and we had the Home Minister again today reiterated, that this policy is not for Indian citizens at all, that nothing is going to happen to Indian Muslims at all. So where is the point of division coming in play?
The division is coming in play, firstly, by making a law which says that you can treat the Muslims as outsiders. That is where divisiveness comes in straight out. That is what runs a coach and horse through secularism in the constitution. If you can treat Muslims as separate when it comes to the granting of benefits for the purposes of refugee law, tomorrow, what is it that prevents you from making the same law in respect of public access to education, in respect to public access to healthcare? Tomorrow, you might as well say that I have the power in Parliament, I have the numbers in Parliament, and I can make a law saying that only Hindus, Parsis, Christians, and Sikhs have access to public Medicare. Would that is reasonable classification according to Mr. Sinha. Therefore comes the question of constitutional scrutiny of this law. If you allow religious-based discrimination in one law, you will have to allow it for all laws. That is the insidious nature of this bill. And I hope the Supreme Court strikes it down. It will take time, but the struggle will go on. If you think that temporary majorities can come to your aid in making laws, sir, there is something which puts legislation beyond temporary majorities. That is the spirit of the Constitution. After that, then comes this question of implementation. How can some states say that we will fail to implement?
Okay.
You are right as far as the citizenship part of it is concerned. But with regard to the NRC or the NPR part of it, where state machinery is being used, states will refuse to cooperate. You may think that you can give them executive directions. If those directions are not followed, you will want to issue president's rule. Please, that is not a way to run a country.
Okay, my last question is to Mr. Roy, Sukhetu Shekhar Roy. This question is to you. You may be opposed to the Citizenship Amendment Act. What justifies Mamata Banerjee's decision to put on hold the entire work for the National Population Register? How can we stop a nationwide exercise that is done on a regular basis? And isn't that in by itself, you know, an act of anarchy?
No, no, not at all. It is very much interlinked with the exercise of NRC.
1 minute.
As you know, our Home Minister has repeatedly said, can I say?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Roy, then I'll go across to Binoy Viswam. Yes.
I have already stated that it is interlinked with NRC. And our Honorable Home Minister has time and again said that NRC shall be made applicable to the entire country.
Yes.
It will be applicable in the entire country. Therefore, we have, suppose we have 25 crores of Muslims, just direct to the point. Now in the Act, the reasonable classification that the BJP friend is telling about, that 6 religious groups have been accommodated and the Muslims have not been accommodated. And the inner interpretation that has been kept in the minds of many, which I have heard, that it means those 6 groups, religious groups, they belong to right religious groups, and the Muslim, they belong to wrong religious group. If that is the attitude or the interpretation that the government of India has accepted, then what will be the ramification, not only within the country, but outside the country? You just see, the entire world is looking at us. We shall be isolated from the world community by alienating the Muslims, 25 crore Muslims, or those who would be the citizens of this country, whether the developmental work of India shall be continued properly. Can it be done? Can India progress by alienating a large number of people by introducing such draconian law? That is a moot question. That is why my leader, Ms. Mamata Banerjee, is repeatedly saying, just kindly consider that the voice of dissent is also to be listened in democracy. We are in a democracy. Because you have the numbers, you will do or undo whatever you want. That is not a democratic attitude at all. And now, not only West Bengal, six states of India, they are opposing. Hundreds of youth, thousands of youth, they are on the streets.
Yes.
Those who are on the rampage, we have condemned them. Categorically, my leader said that we are on the street in a democratic manner, peaceful manner. We will continue to raise our voice of protest, but no vandalism, no hooliganism shall be tolerated in any part of the state or elsewhere by the respective government.
Well, vandalism and hooliganism happened, Mr. Roy. Vandalism and hooliganism took place, Mr. Roy, in the state of Bengal as well. At the same time that Mamata Banerjee was walking and marching across the streets of Kolkata.
Can I come in for a moment?
600 people have been arrested.
And while everybody has a right to dissent in this country, I think it's grand coming from, you know, from the party that Mamata Banerjee leads to talk about silencing the dissent when we know what happens in West Bengal for anybody who wants to dissent. Please. Yes, yes. Tuhin Sinha respond to that though.
One sentence.
What about Delhi? What about Delhi? Why Delhi is burning?
You know,
Why Delhi is burning?
So nobody can hold a higher moral ground then.
What about Delhi?
Religion, I'll answer all of that. You know, if religion is the sole and only criteria for persecution of those minorities in the 3 theocratic...
I have a question to him.
Can you please allow me to speak? Please have that courtesy.
Yes.
phone lana.
No,
Yes,
let me answer, then you can put
Can I
any
ask a
number of
question to you,
questions.
Okay.
So if religion is the sole criteria for discrimination and if religion is the sole criteria for discrimination and persecution of minorities in these three theocratic states, what other reason could we find for giving them citizenship? You know, the sole criteria on which they have been discriminated and persecuted is on the basis of religion. So if these 6 religions are being accepted, I don't see it as a communal or as a discriminating act at all.
Okay.
Does this act bar any citizen from seeking any Pakistani citizen or anybody else from seeking Indian citizenship under SOP and under due process?
No,
Even
but your
Tasneema
government,
Nasreen, for that matter, has lived in India as a
but the
refugee.
government has
and we
made it
welcome
already
that.
very clear to Sinha that
Secondly,
obviously at no
let me
point,
also
given
say-
point
What
in
about
this country
Myanmar?
will Rohingyas be
What
getting a citizenship. The government has made that very, very clear. And if the government was so interested, other religions and other nations would have been included. You've already made it clear that Rohingyas will never be included.
Huge security threat.
Sure, all right.
Which the world acknowledges.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I've completely run out of
That
time.
is another issue. The world acknowledges there is a huge
No,
security threat.
the world doesn't have a consensus on
Can
it,
I
and
just
I don't
for a
need to.
30
I don't
seconds
think
set
we
the
should
record
need to go
straight on
by the
NRC also?
benchmarks that the world really sets here. We need to have our own benchmarks, and we need to have our own policy. We need to have our own secular fabric and our own national policy based on humanitarian grounds and not religious grounds. But that's the debate we've had time and again. What we now really need to look at is what's happening across the country. The protests that are erupting across the country, many of them may be politically fueled. Many of them are actually being led by politicians. But is there more than that? Is there some amount of anger that citizens really have? And then should the government listen to them or simply reject them by saying, well, this is just a small protest and not a large nationwide movement? On the other side, we're going to get you an exclusive voice of Harish Salve on this big debate of whether states refusing to implement the amended Citizenship Act is even legal or not. Stay with us. Lots more lined up on the other side. I thank my panelists for joining us on this conversation.